say there may well be redundancies. There have been instances of where you say there may be redundancies, which puts everybody in a panic.
I think you wait till you're asked that question, rather than, go out there. I worked with an organisation where that was the reality of the situation, but the leader at the time kept, when the staff would say, we hear rumours, he'd say, no, don't be worried, don't go there. And so at the end of the day, of course, people had to be made redundant, and then trust is broken because, you lied to us, basically, was the accusation.
We talked about it in our first webcast, which was the whole notion of, at this point when there is an issue around reorganisation and people are worried, that's the time when your real values actually stand out. I mean, values are easy to have in good times, but your real values actually stand out at a time when you're under pressure. So it's a matter of maintaining those, I suppose, really. But it's a fine line, it's a difficult one. In the reality, I've come across it with people who are saying, I don't want to say that there's going to be redundancy, it's going to cause us a problem, and we want to announce this at the one time so it's contained and controlled, not in a bad way, but in a good way, so there's no kind of rumours flying around.
Yeah, the only problem with that, though, is that who controls the message then? You had an example earlier where you planned for something, everything was, all the data put in place, and suddenly broke at 1 o'clock news.
Yeah.
And then the company was really in a bad way.
Yeah.
So,
anyway, we'll come back to that at some stage. I've read a lot about that you should include everyone in defining the future. Is that not very risky? This whole thing of let's get together and define the future.
I think it might be very risky because essentially it's the main responsibility of a senior management team and senior managers to decide on the strategy of a company. Now, to do that, they need to be informed by really what's happening in the marketplace and what's happening on the ground for people. So I think it's their essential responsibility to decide what needs to be done. The real value of involving people can be in deciding how you implement your strategy and to localise the issues of, well, how is the best way to implement this in your area or in another area. So you need to be informed in terms of your strategy, I think, but the real value for engagement can be in terms of how you implement.
There's an idea, certainly I've implemented in the past, where we're at this stage, we've a notion of where we're going, but we need to figure out the nuts and bolts. And what we did was we took what we call a diagonal slice of the organisation. The organisation was too big to have full representation. So we took people from top to bottom from different departments and brought them together and say, okay, now what are the practical realities of how we implement this, and how is it going to work in your function or your area, your department? And the people on the ground then are the ones who understand the system and the process, and it was that kind of marriage of different grades and different experiences that helped the implementation actually get off.
Right, and what we're going to be doing anyway, we're going to be devoting a particular webcast very specifically to the whole notion of the future and the new organisation as it emerges. We'll deal with that then. I'm preparing a presentation to introduce a reorganisation of my company. How long should it be? Not as long as you think, I suppose, is the answer to that, because most times when people make presentations introducing reorganisation, they want to say everything, and what happens is they overload people with information. I think we may come back to this, but I would just say that by and large, I think it's all of our experience that people want to say too much, want to overkill. Okay. Am I right in thinking that the statutory consultation process is no more than a box ticking exercise? That's the statutory consultation process, if redundancies. Everything here seems to be around redundancies. Now, reorganisation, of course, is not always about redundancies, but in this case, a lot of questions are around that.
Well, I think you're not right in thinking that, because the statutory consultation process, there has to be meaning. It has to be a meaningful consultation process. It's something we're going to cover next week.
Yeah.
Isn't that right? So it's probably best not to go further into that now.
Okay, fine. How do you deal with deadwood when they can't be fired? Can we talk about this kind of stuff here?
Well, it's an interesting question, and you see that perception a lot of the time, and I think a lot of it depends on what's your starting point. If as a company you've ignored bad performance for years, and you adopt this hopeless situation of, well, what can we do because we can't fire them?
Yeah.
If that's your starting point, you're creating a big difficulty for yourself. I think your next point must be to decide collectively, we are going to do something about it, and we're going to do it consistently, and we're going to apply a performance management process, because the all or nothing thinking in that question, in my view, doesn't work. Once you start a process of meaningfully discussing your performance, Peter, and the fact that your performance isn't up to scratch, the dynamics change immediately. So it's not a case of, I can't fire you, so I'm not going to even mention your performance or discuss it with you.
Yeah, no, I think it's very true. I think that if you haven't been performance managing and you end up with people who aren't performing, you do need to take first of all a major decision that you will do it, and you do it consistently. But then you have to tell the person who you're talking to, this is a formal process, it's not a chat, because otherwise it'll just be the same process ongoing again. These are very clear demarcation lines that it's now a formal process, and when you put someone to formal process, that can lead to dismissal.
It can.
It's a process, disciplinary process.
Yeah. And it does need good management skills. It needs an ability to set clear objectives, to monitor performance, to be able to give feedback. So I think those are the key skills, and to manage it. Yeah, I worked with somebody once who used to say, half joking, totally in earnest, that if the situation continues, why don't we just try managing it?
Yeah.
If we have a problem,
as a last resort. Okay, fine. Now, last one here. That I want to deal with this morning.
I should leave for this one. I should leave for this one, should I?
Pardon?
I should leave for this one, no?
You should leave for this one, yeah. What do you do with a CEO who won't listen? That wouldn't be you, Andy.
No, I never came across one of those.
No, you didn't come across one of those. Okay. I don't know what we do with a CEO that can't listen. It's an interesting question. I suppose it's... What do you do?
Well, my starting point on that is that if you're working with such an individual, you really need to understand what's important to them. How does their mind think?
Yeah.
What's their agenda? Because when you say they won't listen, you might be presenting in the wrong way. So if you can try and figure out, how...
No, I think at this stage it's just talking. Someone just tick. That's what they're talking about here. Somebody who just tick and will not listen.
Yeah, but they're actually probably easier to influence than you think. But it's around understanding, how can I present my idea or my proposal in a way that is going to be appealing to them and that is going to make them look, that's going to win and tick their boxes.
Right.
And it's an influence persuasion piece about understanding what's important to them and how can I align my proposal so that it seems to fit with what they want to achieve.
I suppose really we would see that in best practice, communication, if you come at it from the right direction, you'll get anyone to listen if you really work well at it. That's something that you need to work on, and again, that's somebody we should be talking to really in a way, but it can be done. Is what we're saying.
I just a final comment. Perhaps I think usually on a senior management team there is probably an individual there who the CEO will listen to always. Perhaps who has the ear of the CEO or whatever, and you could work through that. That's a process.
A broker kind of.
Yeah.
One question came through here on our screens here, and then we'll get back onto the substantive thing about yourself, Andy, and your experiences. If given the option, do you find that people usually leave or work out their time? Experience on that, Mick, Andy?
I think it varies. In some instances, people will want to leave early, and it may be possible. In some instances, the company has to dictate when they're going to leave, because there is business to be transferred to a new arrangement. There is transition arrangements that need to be managed.
But the question is, if they're given the option, do you find if they say, okay, you can leave or you can stay? They tend to go, do they? Okay, that's your answer. They tend to go. Look, we want to spend a bit of time now just talking to Andy, because he's very good to come in and talk to us from the Irish Blood Transfusion Service. They've done a fair bit of change. And he's just gives a very quick sketch of the IBTS for a start, in terms of its profile. Okay,
it's a national organisation with about 620 staff, a budget of 117 million. I work in 8 locations, 2 major ones, Dublin and Cork, where we manufacture and process blood and distribute it to hospitals around the country, about 64 hospitals. We've gone through significant change over the last number of years, I'm sure everybody will realise. But I suppose the change that has really been important to us in the last while has been our change in our donation process. Because donors are telling us to go waiting